So, I'm talking about outlier detection. Outliers can also be known as anomalies, novelties, aberrations, exceptions, oddities. There are lots and lots of different words we use for these. Here, we use them all to mean something that is caused by a process different from the normal. So, this hit the news, and I thought it was quite interesting. A guy got offered the COVID vaccine. Now, you might not think that was particularly weird, but this was back in the day, back in January, when you had to be really quite ill. He was offered a COVID vaccine, and he went in and he said, I'm a perfectly fit and healthy guy. What's going on? They told him he had a BMI of 28,000. Okay, bit of a problem there. They thought he was not 6'2", but 6.2 centimetres. Now, you might think that some basic error correction, some basic outlier detection would have been helpful, shall we say. Rather more seriously, outlier data is a problem. The ozone layer, the original depletion, the depletion that had been visible for some time, was originally ignored by NASA as its algorithms decided that the sensor was off. There were actually other political problems in NASA as to why there were problems. Nothing actually sinister, just really bad organisation. But yes, this sort of thing is important. Now, the whole reason that I got paid to do this, which is great, thank you very much, was it's condition monitoring, it's health data, sensor data. You get a whole load of unlabeled data, so you can't really do much in the way of supervised learning. Outliers can indicate a problem. For example, one heartbeat could look a bit different from the rest, or one person's heartbeat could look different. Most people's heartbeat, we assume, are perfectly good. One person's might not be. So that could be a problem. A defect in a machine. You do not know how any machine might fail. They can fail in all sorts of wonderful ways. They only tend to work properly in one way. So that gives us an it. That means we can say, OK, we can find out what is normal, and what does not fit, we declare to be an outlier. We also use these algorithms in fraud detection, attack of networks, lots of other things. This is a really useful sort of algorithm. Now, obviously, from a maths point of view or a computer science point of view, we can look at the data. Two-dimensional is lovely, isn't it? We can make a nice plot, we can see what's going on, and look, at the top, we've got that little Gaussian distribution. One of the data points, very much out of distribution, quite obvious to see. The other one, might be an outlier, might not. We're not entirely sure. There are a variety of ways you can use to decide that. Extreme value distributions are one. I'm not going to go into that. I have somewhat less than 20 minutes now, so I'm going to skip that. The second distribution there is much trickier. You've got a circle. Now, 3 of those points are actually within the band of data for the X and for the Y. But the one in the middle is obviously weird. Something is going on there, but we don't know what. And the one obviously out of distribution would be much easier to spot by whatever machine you are using. In time series data, which is the sort of data that I was supposed to be mostly working on, you can find that the outlier can be outside the original distribution. That's easy. Machine learning algorithms can do that. People can do that. That's not really a problem. They can be out of sequence. Easy for people to spot. Not so easy for some machine learning algorithms. The third part, where you get a whole sequence where, maybe something got a bit stuck, something went wrong there. I mean, this is a sine wave, obviously. It's not a heartbeat. But if it was, you'd be worried if your heart sort of got stuck at a little point. I'd be worried. So what we're doing here is we're thinking, well, real data isn't labelled, may or may not contain outliers, is multivariate, may well be periodic. And a lot of the published outlier detection methods require clean data to train on. They assume, OK, we have this beautiful, perfect thing we can train our model on, then everything that looks different after that, well, our model can spot it. And that's great. Works really well on what it's trained and tested on. Machine learning algorithms, however, really haven't caught on in condition monitoring because they don't work very well. They're often trained on publicly available data sets that can be very much overly simple. So our approach, I should say, is to model the data. So we get the data, we model it, then we generate an outlier score. So we've got this model, and we measure how well it fits that data. we rank our samples by score. And that gives us an idea of what is outlier and what is not outlier. The idea behind ranking it as well, instead of just saying that is outlier, that is not outlier, makes it more flexible. So say I'm really worried about this patient and we get an outlier score on whatever measurement it is, and okay, if I had a yes, no, that doesn't tell me very much. If it's, oh, it might be borderline, then maybe we should be looking more carefully at this. Maybe it's not clear. Maybe something else is going on we don't know. So obviously, what with COVID and everything, a lot of this work was done on synthetic data. And the synthetic data, I wanted to make it mimic real data as well as possible. So what methods did I use? Well, I am a bit of a traditionalist. I like regression. Regression is fun. No, it's not. It generally, but everyone knows how to do it. As one of my lecturers always likes to say, this is what you learned in primary school. He's sitting over there. I'm not quite sure what primary school he went to. I didn't. But yes, this is something you learn very early on. It's your first machine learning thing. Now, when you generalize that to multidimensional data, it's pretty much the same thing. You're just adding an extra variable. Okay? So you get this nice little set of equations. X is the next value, and you base it on a certain number before that. It is linear, and it is very sensitive to outliers, which is a problem, because we may have outliers in our data. And if you do regression on a data set that has nicely placed points and one completely out, you will shift your regression line. So that can be quite a problem. And if you want more details on this, there are textbooks. VAR only works well with data that is linear. However, it is also possible to use regression to model how the different features vary with each other. By leaving one feature out and using the others to predict its value, so you can do this on a whole data set depending on how big your data set is, but it scales pretty good, well, to big data sets. If you get one feature somewhere down there that's getting you a bit of an outlier score, so we're making this model work for each feature, predicting one of the features that's not in, and then repeating it, so every feature has the same done for it. We add it all together, and we get an outlier score for each sample. This can give us a family of similar autoregressive methods, which I have called feature regression. I believe my boss would like me to call it cyclic regression. I never quite got the hang of it, and it stayed as FRR. I'm really sorry. Anyway, cyclic regression does sound cooler, I have to admit. But in everything that I've written, it's called feature regression. You can use ordinary least squares regression, you can use the lasso, and you can use ridge regression. It does make a difference, surprisingly. Okay, so that's just one family of algorithms I was working with. There are so many. Now, when we were talking about, lots and lots of the speakers have said how many different things you can do in machine learning. This is a very, very small subgroup of these models, hopefully representing some of the larger families. So we've got one-class SVMs, that's the OC SVMs, DB-scan, which is a newer one, density-based spatial clustering and noise, Gaussian mixture models, quite traditional, the matrix methods, which Niranjan was talking about, some that were related to this, outlier pursuit and a method developed by Niranjan and Omar Shetter, graph-regularized outlier pursuit, that's the word. And then the very fancy, the fashionable neural network methods, LSTMs, GRUs, long short-term memory, probably the worst named algorithm in machine learning, but there you go. It didn't catch on for a long time, and I suspect it was the name. GRUs, gated recurrent units, autoencoders, very fashionable. You can see that there's a picture of one at the top. Variational autoencoders, also very fashionable. And I should probably stop waving my hands around so much. And ensemble methods. Now, isolation forest, right there at the bottom, remarkably simple, lovely method, is sequentially dividing the data along a random point on an axis until you find you've isolated your point. So it's isolation forest. And it actually works remarkably well. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details. I did that the last time I gave this talk, which I believe I was trying to do at the same time while teaching my son geography. If you remember the winter series, it was COVID and it was all a bit hideous. Yes, but I did my talk when I was actually just got the kids' children to bed and I recorded it. So I'm not going to talk about that now. If you want to use these, I even did a library. I loaded it to PyP, so you can do pip install odds. From odds, import OD, which is the outlier detection object. And you can just put a little string as to which one you want. And you get the scores from that. Very simple. Hopefully it works. It works for me anyway. All computer scientists will tell you that. Works on their computer. Okay, so this is the synthetic data. I'm not going to go into any details. As you can see there's a little picture of what it looks like. It's high dimensional. I can change to what extent the outliers are. I can make the data harder to use. I can do all sorts of fun things with it. The details are there. I'm not going to go into it. I doubt highly if I have time. Ooh, gosh.
You can take 5 minutes more because it was unfairly cut by Zoom, I would say.
Okay, thank you. 5 minutes, gosh, right. So those are the scores. I'm not going to go into that detail. As you can see, I'm not going to go into any of this. I don't have time. So outlier regression in terms of FRO, FRR, so those are the feature regression methods, do very well. Ensemble methods, the isolation forest does well. Isolation forest still does well there. OCSVMs, the one-class support vector machines, do well. And again, the feature regression methods work well. If you increase the noise, what fails? DB scan. Supposed to be really sensitive. It's really good with noise. Nope, not very good. And so yes, autoencoders and two of the feature regression methods work really well in high noise. Yeah, you can read that later if you want. So the whole point, what I got paid to do, is this condition monitoring. So you get the running in. This is the bathtub curve. Anyone in condition monitoring will tell you about it. I'd never heard about it before. Things fail more likely at the beginning. And then you have this really long period, completely not to scale on this picture, of normal running. And then you have the wearing out period when things are more likely to fail. This is the machine. A lot of the data was done. My colleague Ping Lu did all of the hard work. This is the simplified diagram. It's called a reciprocating tribometer, or the TE77, to those that know it well. You scrape a bit of metal along another bit of metal, because modern machinery doesn't wear out. It is designed to last for decades. It's brilliant stuff, unless you actually want to see some wear. So what we take there is, you see the little round bit at the bottom? That's called the roller. It doesn't roll. It scrapes along the metal surface. And it's supposed to scrape and create wear. This is the sensor as designed by Neil Grabham and Nick Harris, who we work with. And it's an electrostatic sensor. It works by measuring capacitance on the surface. This is the raw data. Ping Lu did most of the work, all of the work. She gave me the numbers, and then that was my job. So I thought, right, this data doesn't make much sense on its own. I need to picture this a bit better. So I put it into bins. Average values in each bins, so I could see at what time along the stroke. You see the sinusoidal curve is telling you the displacement. That's now the bit at the bottom. The sensor actually hung over a bit, so it went over the edge of the wear scar. Makes it a bit easier to visualize. You get this lovely little animation, which my clicker is doing nicely. And you can see the electrostatic sensor is picking up a buildup of charge just at the end of that wear scar, which is quite cool. So we can look for outliers in the data. We don't have time for video. This is a screenshot from it. This is the outlier score of the last video. So as you can see, normal running, very low outlier scores. LSTMs and OCSVMs seem to pick something going on. I can't see it. Something else is going on there in the data that I can't see. At this point, this is very near the end, real data. Where am I? Yes, something goes on. Ping saw a little bit of muck appearing on the surface, and the outlier scores increased in the friction. You can see there's friction and there's electrostatic measurements there. And then everything started to go a bit wrong. You can see this hump appearing. Now we think that was the buildup of muck. So we're actually picking up something interesting, which if you just look at the numbers, you could not possibly see. This is the image of the plates before and after, because engineers love their pictures of bits of metal. The visible mark appears at the moment the outlier scores increase for electrostatics, and after outlier scores for friction increase. So outlier detection helps condition monitoring, shows things not necessarily visible to the human eye, corresponds to changes in a real system. It's great to do machine learning on real stuff. Simple algorithms work very well, but maybe for more subtle changes, LSTMs may be necessary. Now, this was funded by the EPRSSE, thank you very much. I guess there's no time for questions.
Thank you, Jo, very much.